Welcome to the first and last episode of Urban Nature, where we're going to stare at this Napa Auto Parts store in its natural habitat. I'm just kidding. Welcome to another episode of FEC Friday, where we're not going to stare at the building because it obviously still won't move. But anyways, we're going to sit along this elusive game trail for trains. And by elusive, I mean obvious because, it's really not hard to find train tracks. But anyways, we are going to watch the FEC Southbound. I believe it's either 105 or 107. I'm still new to this FEC stuff, so I am not exactly sure. But if you do know, please enlighten me in the comments. I'm still trying to learn this stuff. But this is obviously a very elusive ES44C4 and everybody's favorite Faro East Coast scheme. I actually do like it, but I know a lot of the diehards are still upset about the champion scheme going away. But anyways, enjoy. So going by the stuff that I've been reading off of their website, it seems like the southbounds are more of the loaded trains, while the northbounds are more of the backhaul, hauling the empty stuff back up, which from, I guess, my observations does make sense because I have noticed these southbound ones do seem to be shorter, which would make sense if they have more weight, so you can have less cars. And then the northbounds, if they're empty, then they're going to have more cars because they weigh less. And as you can see on this one, you can see the wood on top of the trailers, which on top of the trailers. So we got a trailer to tow your wood. So yeah, anyways, but yeah, this is southbound, so I'm guessing this is going to be loads. And then this next clip is here in Bunnell, just facing the other way. This is the next morning, and this is a northbound, and you'll notice it's considerably longer, so probably has some more empties attached to it. So the last locomotive in this consist is not actually a locomotive anymore. Number 2414 was the FEC number 719, which originally was built as Union Pacific number 3669, which was an SD40-2, and it was built in January of 1980. I believe FEC acquired it back in 2002, 2003, and then obviously they used it as an actual locomotive for a while, but then it was recently converted into an autonomous track inspection vehicle. So basically the primary runner and the fuel tank were removed, and a whole bunch of electronics were installed. So it's basically a geometry car, and it inspects the track every time it comes up and down. I usually see it fairly regularly, so I'm not sure if it's on permanently addition to one of the trains, and so it just does a daily back and forth, which to me I think is actually a pretty neat way to repurpose a old locomotive. Like, as much as I love to see SD40-2s pulling freight all the time, I know they're dated and they're old and not as fuel efficient, so instead of getting scrapped, I'd rather see them doing this because at least I still get to look at them. So if you've seen any of my previous Railfanning videos, you're probably very familiar with this spot. This is the Otis Stonehunter Road crossing. I like it because there's low vehicular traffic and you get nice long sweeping views of the trains in either directions, whether they're northbound or southbound. But this is about 4 miles north of Bunnell, and while I didn't get a nice long sweeping view today, I do think the rain added a nice effect. So here we are at the same spot the next day. I believe this is train 202, but check out the trailing motor in this consists. It's a rough looking GP40. So next week I again found the 202 heading up in the morning, but this time I found it to have a double set of ES44 C4s with fuel tenders. I believe the second set of ES44s and fuel tender combination is offline. I don't believe it's actually running, but I could be wrong. I don't know if it's like a dead in tow or a power move, or maybe they were due for their 90-day inspections. I could be wrong, but anytime they do these double sets, I like to chase them and get more photos and videos of them, just because they're kind of unique in today's railroading industry. So later that afternoon, I decided to make a trip down to Port Orange, or Port Orange, you say it normally. And as you can see, the weather changed significantly since the morning time, and unfortunately that's been the par for the course for the past month. Here in Florida, it's been basically sunny and clear in the mornings, and then you get these nice, intense little storm cells in the afternoon, which I won't complain. We have a lot of trees and national forests nearby, so I'd rather them be green and not on fire. So in Aussie, as you can see, it does not stop me from trying to film, though it does make it slightly inconvenient. But anyways, went down here to Port Orange and sat here next to this depot, and I mentioned it in a previous video. This depot was built in 1894, and while I don't think it's the oldest depot the FEC ever had, I think it's the oldest one that's still in existence. I think any of the older ones have either been torn down or destroyed, or who knows what's happened. I mean, it is Hurricane Central. So, but anyways, went down to Port Orange and I caught the afternoon southbound. So the next morning I decided to go and visit NSB, or New Smyrna Beach Yard. And while I pulled up, there was a local working in one of the industries, and I think he may have been doing some switching. And you'll see him come back into the yard. And then a few minutes after that, I believe it's another northbound. I don't know the number on this one, but this one I ended up chasing up to St. Augustine. And while you can't really tell in this shot, behind me there's a big storm brewing. And the northbound is going to end up having to go through this pretty intense rainstorm to get to Jacksonville. And like I said before, unfortunately I did not get that on video, but you'll see the difference in the weather once we get to St. Augustine. So he's watching this Jeep 40 take these well-used hoppers into the yard. You'll see on one of them it says Titan America. I believe all these hoppers, or at least these ones up front, are owned and used by Titan America. There's actually a Titan plant up on the Wilbur Wright Industrial Lead that I plan on trying to film once I figure out the local schedule up there. Which, fun fact, the Wilbur Wright Industrial Lead actually used to be the old Florida East Coast mainline when it used to go to East Palatka and then curve back around towards Bunnell. But in 1925, they made the Moultrie cutoff and built the mainline that you see today. And so the old mainline was basically trimmed back over the years. I think the first part was abandoned in 1950, which the bridge over the St. John's to Palatka was removed. And then the section between East Palatka and Bunnell was abandoned in 1972. And then the section between East Palatka and Hastings was abandoned in 88. And they kept the section between Hastings and St. Augustine, I think, intact, but it wasn't used for a while. And then in the early 2000s, they had some new customers, in which I think Titan is one of them, and it is now used as a daily local. But again, once I figure out the schedule, I'll try to get that on film for y'all. So this GP38-2 may look familiar to some of y'all. For those of y'all who watch Multicolor Films' recent video on the U.S. Sugar operation and FEC operations down in South Florida, you would have noticed that locomotive was in his video. That's one of the 3 Jeep units that are still in the Hurricane/Going Places scheme. I always thought it was the Hurricane scheme, but I was informed that it's also known as the Going Places scheme. But it kind of works out because hurricanes go places and they go wreck your house. So, anyways, maybe that's FEC saying that they're going to go wreck house in the railroad industry. I don't know. I'm just making shit up. Anyways, it's always nice to see one of those old schemes rolling around. Though I do wish it still had the gyro light and safety lights on it. So while the New Smyrna Beach Yard is not exactly the easiest to film, there are a couple of vantage points along the roadway and from one of the grocery store parking lots where you can kind of see a little bit of the yard. Here along US 1, I was able to see some of their old UP SD40-2s that they acquired about 20 years ago. And I figured, in spirit of the recent UP-NS merger talks announcement, I'd go ahead and put some of these in there. Plus, like I said, I just liked putting SD40-2s in any video that I do just because it's my favorite locomotive of all time. I've told y'all that before. It's a GOAT. It's the greatest. I don't know what the plan is for these. Unfortunately, they look pretty dilapidated. That armor yellow is pretty faded. I don't even know if they're in running condition or not. They don't look like they are, but they do have ACs on them, so maybe they are. They're just in storage. I know they converted one of them to that autonomous track inspection vehicle that I talked about earlier. And I don't know if maybe I have plans to do more like that or if they're just kind of spares. But I just hope they don't ever get scrapped. And FEC, if you're watching this and you don't actually have plans with one of them and you'd like to donate it to the Rabid Foamer Foundation that I haven't created yet, but I will create it if you want to donate an SD40-2 to it, I will gladly take one for free. I just need you to ship it to me somehow. Please and thank you. All right, y'all, back to our regularly scheduled program of foaming over moving trains. So here you go. Surprise, surprise! Guess where we're back at? You would never would have guessed. Yes, we're back at my favorite spot. However, on this video, I do actually have a surprise. I didn't notice it when I was filming it, but I noticed it when I was editing it. One of the containers on the intermodal is open. So, I paused it for y'all to make it easier to find. If you still can't find it, well, you probably need to get your eyes checked. Ding, 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 here's your hint. Alright, y'all, we're going to sunset this video with a southbound at sunset. And there's a nice EMD goat in the trailing position on this one. right, y'all. Thanks for watching. I'll try to have some more Railfan videos coming up. I also probably actually have some more rant videos coming up. And for you NS guys who are worried about UP obliterating your identity, welcome to the club. UP has obliterated my 3 favorite railroads: the Katy, the Rio Grande, the SP. Actually, no, it's 4, and the Mopac. So, first of all, the STB hasn't approved the merger, and second of all, if they do obliterate y'all can come and we can all have railroad trauma together. It'll be okay. We'll sing Kumbaya and make s'mores.